This will sound very strange, but the righteous Christian God of the Bible has used the greatest aviation mystery in history, the mysterious disappearance of Amelia Earhart in 1937 in a plane crash, as she attempted to become the first woman to fly around the world, to point to the predicted death of the first woman vice president in a plane crash on February 10th, 2024. It is also predicted that the first woman president, Michelle Obama, will replace Kamala Harris and become the president on February 20th, 2024. This and many more truly amazing and profound things will be explained in this important video. The date that this video is posted proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time, as does this time-stamped email and forensic notes PDF document. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. As can be seen in this email, the prediction that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash so that Barack Obama can become the president again has been known since at least August 5th, 2021. Alright, welcome. In this video, I will explain a number of profound reasons for how it is known that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on February 10th, 2024 in St. Louis due to turbulence and a bird strike. Anyway, also in this video, I will include how God has incorporated Amelia Earhart, the greatest aviation mystery of all time, the 20th century of all time, of course. Aviation started in the early 20th century. And that'll be amazing as well. So stay tuned for that part of this explanation and part of God's signs that are pointing to the date that Kamala Harris is predicted to die in a plane crash in St. Louis on February 10th, 2024. To explain this, I'm just going to read this email that I composed. And as we can see, this email was composed on January 31st, 2024. Okay, January 31st, 2024. So let's begin. This email is documenting the prediction that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash in St. Louis on February 10th, 2024. Her plane crash will be caused by lightning, turbulence, and a bird strike. It is predicted that she will be replaced by Michelle Obama. Soon after, Joe Biden is predicted to step down, and Michelle will become the 47th president. She is predicted, and that's predicted to be on February 20th. She is predicted to appoint Barack Obama as the 51st vice president on March 6th, 2024. Soon after this, it is predicted that the Obamas will divorce or separate, and Obama will become the 48th president, and that is predicted to be on March 20th, 2024. Today's date is January 31st, 2024. God is pointing to the 24th of Shabbat, which is from sunset February 2nd to sunset February 3rd. It is now believed that February 2nd will be a step in the trail of signs, and that Harris's crash will be on the anniversary of the Israeli F-16 fighter jet that was shot down by Iran and Syria on February 10th, 2018, on the 24th of Shavat. I was closely following along with Dan Matson at the time, and Dan was able to predict the 11-hour window for this incident based on the recent Jupiter-Mars conjunction and the Revelation chapter 12 sign in the night sky that occurred in September of 2017. So just a few months before January of 2017, and Dan being able to foresee that God was pointing to an 11-hour window in which the F-16 of the Israeli Defense Forces was shot down. So he predicted that ahead of time. And that's because, of course, Mars is symbolism for war. I'll attach a diagram he made. Well, I won't actually, but it's pretty interesting. I'm speaking to some friends that I'm writing to here. Incidentally, this was a sort of beginning of realizing that things could be predicted in advance, although this wasn't fully appreciated until December of 2019. And what I'm referring to is that things being able to be predicted in advance. God arranged it so that Dan and I were sharing closely together during this period in early 2018, so that this plane crash would be set in my memory, so that it could be recalled now to confirm February 10th, 2024, the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. Which again is okay. So I'm talking about Shavat 24 as well, and let's see, have I already? So sorry, never mind. Also, recall that October 7th, which was the day of the Hamas breaking through the security barrier into Israel, was exactly 69 months after the Jupiter-Mars conjunction on January 7th, 2018. This Mars-Jupiter conjunction that I just mentioned a minute ago occurred on this date, and that date, which again, Mars is about war, that date was exactly 69 months before October 7th, 2023, which is astounding because 69 months is a period of time, and in the most central prophecy in the Bible, we have a period of 69 weeks. But the weeks is just a metaphor. So anyway, that's why that's astounding. The F-16 and 16 hints at 4 times 4, and the 44th president was shot down exactly 2 times 3 years, which hints at 23, before February 10th, 2024, making this a pairing of 44 and 23. And I'm speaking in short notation here because the people that I am writing to already know what I am referring to. But what I am referring to is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel, works. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. And one simple way, if we think about it, in which he would provide a second witness for us is through pairing certain numbers together, such as 44 and 23. And that's essentially because the 44th president was the basketball president who wore jersey 23. And the reason why I know that God pairs 44 and 23 to confirm his big picture of signs, patterns, and connections is because I have been studying his big picture of signs, patterns, and connections for full-time hours from morning until night for 6 years. Okay, so also the shoot down of the Israeli F-16, which hints at 4 times 4 by Iran, is 2 times 3 years to Harris's predicted crash, which is 4 times 4 days to the date it is predicted that Israel will bomb Iran on February 26th. All right. Now, well, just a side note, February 26th hints at 226 and the 226th word in Strong's Hebrew Old Testament Concordance, which is the word that means prophetic sign. Anyway, that's another pairing of 23 and 44 because it's the F-16 that connects with the 2 times 3 years. And it's also 4 times 4 days because the F-16 was shot down by Iran. And February 10th, 2024, in turn, connects with 4 times 4 days to the date it is predicted that Israel will bomb Iran. Okay, so that's another 23 and 44. February 10th will be 8 days after the date 2-2, February 2nd. The sign God will be pointing to on February 2nd, because this email is being composed before February 2nd, the sign that God will be pointing to on February 2nd is Harris's visit to the 8th state, South Carolina. We are blessed to be able to know in advance what the sign on February 2nd, 2-2, will be, and to not have to wait. This will be Harris's 3rd visit to South Carolina in a month. She visited on January 6th, 9 + 9 + 9 days before February 2nd. And she visited 9 days after January 6th. She visited South Carolina 9 days after January 6th on January 15th, which is 9 + 9 days before February 2nd. February 2nd, the date 2-2, will be her 9th visit to South Carolina as vice president. And this is all because the number 9 is the most important number in God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel, as from the Bible, the number 9 symbolizes God's judgment. On January 6th, she visited Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, the location where the spy balloon was shot down, which was a prophetic sign that also hints at Kamala Harris's plane, because the spy balloon was shot down by a plane and crashed, and Kamala Harris will crash in her plane. And that's just scratching the surface of how the spy balloon was a prophetic sign pointing to Kamala Harris and her predicted death in a plane crash. The spy balloon sign was about its path from west to east across the nation, and this pointed to the path of totality of the eclipse in 2017 from west to east across the nation, where it exited the U.S. over South Carolina. On January 15th, Kamala Harris visited Columbia, which in God's signs is symbolism for America, the name Columbia, South Carolina, for King Day at the Dome, which hinted at kingdom, possibly kingdom of the Antichrist or the coming kingdom of Christ, as it was her 8th visit to the 8th state, and Jesus in Greek gematria equals 888. Or perhaps both. Perhaps this visit to South Carolina for King Day at the Dome, hinting at kingdom, is a hint at both the Antichrist kingdom and the coming kingdom. By the way, if you don't know what gematria is, Roman, Greek, and Hebrew letters are also numbers, and as such, names can be converted into a numeric value. And Jesus equals 888, and anyway, it was her 8th visit to the 8th state when she went there for King Day at the Dome. Okay, now back to what I was saying here. This is why this is a very important sign. Her 9th visit to South Carolina on the date 2-2 is because it is pointing to the path of totality. Because the balloon was shot down off the coast of South Carolina after its path across the nation from west to east, and also the eclipse exited the U.S. after making a path across the U.S. from west to east. And so anyway, Kamala Harris will also die in a plane crash on her flight across the nation. Whether that is from west to east or east to west, it doesn't really matter. But she will crash in St. Louis also because of this, because the path of totality passed over St. Louis, the biggest city over which it passed over. Anyway, so that's what I'm getting at here is February 2nd. The reason why it's so important and her visit there is because of the prophetic significance of South Carolina and paths across the U.S. Okay. On February 2nd, 2/2, she will visit a university in Orangeburg, South Carolina. Orangeburg, South Carolina was within the path of totality of the eclipse, as was Columbia, South Carolina. Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, the other place she visited within a month period to South Carolina, also hints at the path of totality because of the balloon. And so all three of her visits to South Carolina this year in 2024 hint at the path of the eclipse. Trump, God's trumpet, who God uses to trumpet and highlight his prophetic signs. As in archaic English, the name Trump means trumpet or the sounding of a trumpet. Trumpet will be in South Carolina, will also be in South Carolina on 2/2. He will be in Columbia, which again is symbolic of America. His visit on 2/2 will be a trumpet pointing to Harris in South Carolina on 2/2, who will be southeast of him, which will mirror the path of the eclipse over South Carolina, because the eclipse moved from west to east and it passed over Columbia before it passed over Orangeburg. So you follow what I'm saying there? Trumpet will be trumpeting basically the eclipse. In summary, God very cleverly led us to October 17th in order to point to Zechariah chapter 1. Myrtle trees, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and the 24th of Shavat. This led us to the 24th of Shavat because the prophecy in Zechariah 1 is dated the 24th of Shavat, as I explained in the Gaza hospital explosion video. Okay, so just a refresher though, the amazing signs on October 17th pointed to Zechariah chapter 1, which is about myrtle trees, which hinted at Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, as was explained in the Gaza video. And the prophecy, this very important prophecy in the book of Zechariah chapter 1, is dated. Zechariah recorded the date on which he received the prophecy, which was the 24th day of Shavat, which was in this year in the Hebrew calendar, February 2nd to 3rd, because Hebrew calendar dates begin at sunset. Okay, so this led us to February 2nd, the 24th of Shavat, and South Carolina, and because of Myrtle Beach, because of myrtle trees in the prophecy, and because of the connection, as I explained in the Gaza video. Okay, so in other words, October 17th already pointed to South Carolina, and through this, God is again confirming, through the signs on February 2nd, God is again confirming that her flight path will mirror the eclipse's path, and therefore he is again confirming that Harris will crash in St. Louis. And the purpose of all of this will be to again point God's purpose will again be to point to the eclipse, the big warning of judgment, the great American eclipse. That was in 2017. By the way, for more explanation on the eclipse, watch part 5 of the video series that I made way back in 2017 before the eclipse, titled The Most Astounding Information Ever. It was the first 5 videos I ever made, but the 5th one is about an hour long, and it goes into good, important detail regarding the great American eclipse judgment warning sign. Okay? On this note, St. Louis will point to Little Egypt because the eclipse peaked over St. Louis and over the area of the country nicknamed Little Egypt. Because this is prophetic from the Bible, Egypt, the Israelites in Egypt were afflicted for 430 years, as the Bible says, and the Israeli F-16 was shot down in 2018, what I'm speaking of. It was shot down at 4:30 a.m. All right. Now, here is the part about Amelia Earhart, this prophetic sign that God is using here. It's quite something. In the midst of Harris's prophetic visits to South Carolina this year, God used an ocean exploration company based in Charleston, South Carolina, which, by the way, is where the eclipse exited into the Atlantic Ocean. And speaking of ocean here, we're talking about an ocean exploration company. So the eclipse exited over Charleston, South Carolina, over into the Atlantic Ocean, and now, in the midst of these prophetic Harris visits to South Carolina this year, God has used an ocean exploration company based in Charleston, South Carolina. You follow what I'm saying? God is continuing the path into the Atlantic Ocean through this ocean exploration company. Okay, and he used this company to point to the greatest aviation mystery, the death in a plane crash of the first woman to attempt to fly around the world solo, points to the first woman vice president who will die in a plane crash. Amelia Earhart, along with her navigator, disappeared near Howland Island in the Pacific Ocean after they had departed Hawaii. This was on the date 7/2, July 2nd, in 1937. The death of the two aviators on July 2nd, 1937, after their departure from Hawaii, was exactly 84 years before two pilots crashed their cargo Boeing 737, which hints at 37, as in 1937, in the ocean after they had departed Hawaii on July 2nd in 2021. Obama in Hebrew gematria equals 84. And he was born on the date 8/4, August 4th. Obama is also from Hawaii. And of course, it is through the death of Kamala Harris that in a plane crash that Obama will become the president again and the Antichrist. That is the reason why Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. Okay, so again, I'm just going to repeat this. The Amelia Earhart and her navigator, okay, the two aviators that died in a plane crash mysteriously after departing Hawaii on July 2nd, 1937, was exactly 84 years before two pilots and only two people in the plane crashed their cargo Boeing 737, which hints at 1937, into the ocean after they had departed Hawaii on the same calendar date, July 2nd in 2021. And so this 84 years hints at Obama, because Obama in Hebrew is 84, and he was born on the date 8/4. Also, Obama is from Hawaii. The two pilots were rescued by the U.S. Coast Guard after a brief search. The U.S. searched the Pacific Ocean for 4 times 4 days, which hints at the 44th president, for Amelia Earhart and her navigator. Finally, it is known how this crash on July 2nd, 2021 fits into the big picture. I hadn't thought previously about Amelia Earhart's plane crash, but I certainly should have. Anyway, on the date January 27th, the Charleston company, Deep Sea Vision, posted on social media that they believe they have finally discovered Earhart's plane. So this is how God brings it all into the present moment. It is through this Charleston company and the date that they posted that they had discovered her plane. Their post on the 27th of the month hints at the date of Earhart's crash on 7/2, which outside of the US is written as 2/7, which hints at 27. And the cargo plane crash also on the same date, 7/2. The 27th of the month, as in January 27th, the day that the Charleston Company posted they had discovered her plane, is 2 times 7 days before Harris's predicted crash on February 10th, 2024. That is amazing. So, again, Earhart's plane was posted to have been discovered on the 27th. Earhart's crash was on 7/2. 84 years later was also a 7/2. This is the reason for the 84 years in between the two crashes, is to give a confirmation for the relevance of the plane being discovered on the 27th, because it is a 7 and a 2. And that is for adding 2 times 7 days to get February 10th, the date of Kamala Harris's plane crash. The first woman vice president will crash. I should say acting vice president, because, well, you know what I'm talking about. Will be pointed to through the first woman attempting to fly around the world and her crash. Okay, this connection of 2 times 7 days is also 336 hours. And in Strong's Greek Concordance, the 336th word means put to death. Earhart equals earthquake. The name Earhart seems to hint at earthquake. The walls of Jericho collapsed in God's judgment due to an earthquake. It was Joshua who led the Israelites in a symbolic 3 sets of 7 around the walls of Jericho before they collapsed, and Joshua died at the age of 110. February 10th, 2024 will be exactly 73, which hints at 3 sets of 7, months after the end of the earthquake tetrad on the date January 10th, 110, which hints at 110 in 2018. The earthquake tetrad was 4 7.0 or greater earthquakes spaced by 177 days. Okay, the earthquakes were 177 days apart. All 4 of them were 7.0 or greater, and there were no intervening 7.0 or greater earthquakes. This is the same as a blood moon tetrad lunar eclipse. This is the same as a blood moon lunar eclipse tetrad, okay? And so that's why this is, if you will, an earthquake tetrad. The third of the 4 dates was extremely prophetic, but that is the subject of another video. The last date was also prophetic, as I just said. The last of the dates was January 10th. And that hints at Joshua, who died at the age of 110 after the walls of security collapsed due to an earthquake. Archaeology proves that, by the way. The walls of Jericho collapsing due to an earthquake. So you get what I'm saying here? So the earthquake tetrad ended on January 10th, which is a Joshua date because it hints at 110. The earthquake tetrad, okay, I just explained that. So Harris's predicted crash on February 10th hints at 210, which is 70 plus 70 plus 70, and this hints at 3 sets of 7 before the earthquake at Jericho. Okay, because again, in the book of Joshua, the Israelites enacted a symbolic 3 sets of 7. They marched around the walls 7 times, once per day, and then on the 7th day, 7 times on the 7th day, and while also blowing 7 trumpets. It was a 3 sets of 7, okay? And so That's why Harris's crash will be on the date 210, which hints at 210, which is 70 plus 70 plus 70, because her crash will be, if you will, a symbolic walls of security collapsing, because it will lead to the rise of the Antichrist as her replacement. Okay, and that's why her crash will be exactly 73 months after the end of the earthquake tetrad. Okay? All right. Biden named Harris as her vice presidential candidate, as his vice presidential candidate, running mate, on August 11th, 2020, exactly 135 weeks after the end of the earthquake tetrad. G135 is the word meaning a riddle, an enigma. And what I mean by that is the 135th word in the Greek concordance. Okay, so it's meaning a riddle, and so that's the riddle. Okay, that's the confirmation that the 73 months from the end of the earthquake tetrad is relevant, because 135 weeks after the end of the earthquake tetrad points to the symbolic date for Kamala Harris, which was the day that he was named Biden's vice presidential candidate running mate. Therefore, this is a clue, as in riddle, an enigma, that points to the importance of Harris's death in a plane crash, as she will be replaced by the Antichrist. The end of the earthquake tetrad on January 10th, which hints at 110, in 2018, was 110 days after the Revelation 12 sign. The 73 months connection between the earthquake tetrad and Harris's predicted crash is also 2,222 days, and the Revelation 12 sign on the 22nd of September was 2,222 days after the Washington, D.C. earthquake cracked the Washington Monument. Washington was born on the date 2/22. The Swan Islands earthquake 2018 was a strike-slip earthquake. This was the earthquake at the end of the earthquake tetrad. Harris's crash will be due to a bird strike, hence the Swan Islands strike-slip earthquake. Harris will be replaced by the 44th president, and the Swan Islands earthquake 2018 was 44 kilometers east of Great Swan Island. The Swan Islands earthquake 2009 was 7.3 in magnitude, which hints at 3 sets of 7. It had 3 4.0 aftershock earthquakes, which hints at 444 and the 44th president. And it was 4 months and 8 days, as in the 48th president, Barack Obama, after the 44th president's inauguration, which was exactly 1,260 years after the deadliest earthquake in Israel in 749 AD that killed tens of thousands of people. The reason for 1,260 years being relevant is because the Antichrist is mentioned 7 times in Bible prophecy as being a ruler in a period of 1,260 days, which is why Obama's inauguration was exactly 1,260 years after the deadliest earthquake in Israel history. Okay, so did you follow this here? Okay, so we had the connection to the earthquake tetrad, 73 months, okay, which is also, incidentally, 2,222 days, all right? Now again, the earthquake tetrad was which hints at 110, was 110 days after the Revelation chapter 12 sign, the great sign in heaven. There's only 2 signs in the Bible described as being great. This was fulfilled anyway. So, in other words, The earthquake tetrad, which hints at 110 because of the date, was 110 days after the Revelation 12 sign, and 2,222 days after the earthquake tetrad is the day Harris's plane will crash, but also 2,222 days before the Revelation 12 sign that occurred on the 22nd of the month was the Washington, D.C. earthquake. And of course, Kamala Harris's death in a plane crash will be significant for Washington, D.C. because it will lead to a change in the White House with the Antichrist. Okay, and the Washington, D.C. earthquake cracked the Washington Monument. That was the thing that it was known for. And Washington was born on the date 222, which is why we have the 2,222 days connection to the 22nd of the month. Also, Washington is symbolism for America, and this is a warning of judgment, destruction of America, ultimately. Okay. The Washington, D.C. earthquake was exactly 9 years before the drawbridge at the Twin Towers, which looked like an 11, which makes it a pairing of 9 and 11, which God pairs together to confirm his signs, patterns, and connections, in London, stopped working on August 23rd, 2020, which is where David Blaine, who was born on the date the Twin Towers in New York officially opened, hung in a plexiglass cube for 44 days. David Blaine hung on the London drawbridge, the London Towers drawbridge, for 44 days. He hung in a plexiglass cube without food for 44 days, and this since at the 44th president. Also the 9 years since at 2009. The 44th president became the president in 2009. Okay, so 9 years to the day that the drawbridge Twin Towers stopped working. And that pairs with the 44 because the drawbridge is associated with David Blaine. Because David Blaine was born on the same day that the Twin Towers were officially opened. Furthermore, David Blaine held the record for most number of minutes holding his breath underwater, 17 minutes and 4 seconds. And that is because the Twin Towers were struck by the two planes 17 minutes apart. That's just, David Blaine is also from New York City and on and on. Anyway, that's why he's associated with these two towers in London prophetically. All right, so Blaine's stunt was next to Potter's Field. Not only was he hanging from the Twin Tower there, but it was also next to Potter's Field, which hints at the Potter's Field in New York City, where David Blaine is from, and famously from. He got his start by doing street magic in the street of New York City. Okay, and Potter's Field in New York City was the big deal during the CVD disease, when they were piling up the bodies that they were murdering in the hospital in Queens. You heard me correctly. And the prediction in this video will prove what I just said. And the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove what I just said. Make no mistake. If you didn't know that, you've been brainwashed. And that was the big hype, by the way, for the supposed deadliness of this CVD disease, which wasn't, of course, deadly like it was being portrayed in the first days in New York City to get everyone scared out of their minds. It was because the death toll piled up in the one hospital, the Elmhurst Hospital, because they were literally murdering their patients in the hospital. All right? And that's for a number of reasons, but it all is traced back to Satan ultimately. But there were incentives like, the amount of money they would get, the use of the controversial treatment beginning with an R and ending with a Esavir, okay, and it begins with a REM. You know what I'm talking about, right? The rem and then it ends with a esavir. Got it? The thing that is actually snake poison, literally. Okay, enough. But make no mistake. The reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to interject these things here and there, these truths, and no one will otherwise listen to unless it's slammed in their face with a prediction like this. Make no mistake. The reason why God has given me a voice is through this prediction is to prove what I just said. So wake up. Okay? People were being murdered in the hospital there to create fear for this faux thing. Begins with a P. Okay, let's move on. And August 23rd, 2020 was the 42nd anniversary, 42 in a period of time from Bible prophecy is related to the Antichrist, okay? So August 23rd, 2020 was the 42nd anniversary of Kobe Bryant's birth. Okay, now Kobe is prophetic because his name in Hebrew sounds like CVD disease. Okay, if you sound out his name with using Hebrew, it's the same as CVD. I'm not going to pronounce it. You know what I'm talking about, though, okay? That's one reason why God used Kobe Bryant. Furthermore, he died in a plane crash and in a helicopter, and the helicopter is a sign that God uses helicopters for their rotor blades, which are in the shape of an X, which hints at the Tav mark, which is the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist in the Bible. Okay, so in other words, the X is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist, which, by the way, is why the two eclipse paths, which will cross over each other in Little Egypt, will engender an X, because it is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. Okay, so again, I don't want to lose you here. It's not complicated. Blaine's stunt was next to Potter's Field, okay? Hints at the CVD disease. And the date of the drawbridge not working, August 23rd, 2020, was the 42nd, as in symbolic of the Antichrist, after Kobe, which is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist, his birth, okay? Now, Kobe died in an aviation disaster. The Twin Towers drawbridge went out on August 23rd, 2020, where Blaine hung for 44 days next to Potter's Field, which, by the way, is from the Bible, where it is where Judas hung himself, hence why Blaine hung next to Potter's Field. It's because Judas in the Bible hung himself at Potter's Field. Okay, so again, let's go through this again. Kobe Bryant died in an aviation disaster. The Twin Towers drawbridge went out on August 23rd, 2020, where Blaine hung for 44 days next to Potter's Field on the same day that it was reported that there were 44,000 new CVD cases in the U.S. in the previous 24 hours, which of course was bogus, but God still uses this number anyway. And on the same day, it was reported that there were a total of 23 million cases worldwide, which is astounding because, as I said at the beginning of this video, to confirm his signs and connections, God pairs the numbers 44 and 23 together. And I explained why. The 44th president wore jersey 23 in high school. But that's just the beginning of why God... Anyway, 44,000 cases and 23 million cases were reported on the same day, this prophetic day, on the day that the drawbridge got stuck. And that points to Kobe Bryant because it was on his 42nd birthday, and he hints at the mark of the Antichrist. In other words, it's confirmation that the CVD disease and the thing that people took because of it is the mark of the Antichrist and is not a supposed precursor to the mark of the Antichrist. And make no mistake, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove this. When this prediction comes to pass, end of debate. No more discussion at all as to whether it is or isn't the mark of the Antichrist. It is the mark of the Antichrist in its current form. It does not need an additional something to go with it, such as an additional technology or form of false religious worship, or a supposed new age of dispensation after supposedly all quote-unquote Christians will be raptured. In fact, one of the reasons why a majority of quote-unquote Christians have already taken the mark of the Antichrist is that it is judgment for this doctrine that is rooted in once saved, always saved, and sovereign grace and dispensationalism and free grace. This idea that what's described, for example, regarding the 7 churches in the book of Revelation does not apply to people that live on this side of the rapture. This disgraceful conclusion, especially given that these letters were written to churches in Asia Minor in this supposed particular, what they call the church age, the age of grace, that supposedly in their theology precedes the tribulation age. Okay, Jesus said he is coming to make war with the sword of his mouth on those that teach and have the works that are a product of the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day. And this is the Nicolaitan doctrine. That's the reason why quote-unquote Christians have already taken the mark of the Antichrist. It is judgment for their Nicolaitan doctrine. And the purpose of this prediction is to prove what I have just said. Now, there is nowhere in the Bible that it says that one cannot repent after taking the mark of the Antichrist. But it is a very serious thing that one has taken it, because it is leading to mass demonic possession. It has changed one's chromosomes. It has put snake chromosomes into the human chromosomes, okay? And on. Watch the snake bite video. And by the way, the commonly held objections based on people's understanding of Bible prophecy are answered at the end of the snake bite video. So make sure you watch the snake bite video. It'll explain more. All right. Now back to what we were saying here. Okay. So this is astounding. We were talking about this August 23rd date, which was 9 years after the Washington, D.C. earthquake, which connected to the end of the earthquake tetrad, which connected to how Kamala Harris's aviation disaster, and Kobe Bryant died in an aviation disaster. All right. Now, here is the thing. August 23rd, 2020 is exactly 181 weeks before Harris's predicted aviation disaster on February 10th, 2024. And Barack Obama in Hebrew gematria is 181. Furthermore, the 42nd prime number is 181. Oh, I mentioned that down in the next sentence, okay? And again, 42 is the number of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy. Barack Obama will replace Harris after her plane crash, which is why we have on August 23rd the sign that hinted at the Twin Towers on 9/11 because of the Twin Towers of the London Bridge and David Blaine. And 9/11 was about plane crashes, which is why this is relevant, this connection between the bridge, Twin Towers, and Kamala Harris's plane crash. The 44,000 and 23 million CVD disease cases on August 23rd, 2020 was on the 42nd anniversary of Kobe, which hints at CVD disease and aviation disaster and the mark of the Antichrist because of rotor blades from a helicopter, and connects to Harris's predicted aviation disaster with the 42nd prime number. Amazing. President Cleveland was the only president to serve non-consecutive terms. He skipped the 23rd presidency. LeBron James, who wears number 23, famously won the championship for Cleveland, his hometown, and broke the supposed Cleveland sports curse, which hints at the curse of the Antichrist. Furthermore, just like President Cleveland, who served non-consecutive terms, LeBron James played non-consecutive terms, if you will, for Cleveland. He famously left Cleveland and famously returned to Cleveland after playing in Miami in order to win the championship. Okay, and all of this is hinting at how Barack Obama, who also wore jersey 23 like LeBron James, and likewise will serve non-consecutive terms, just like President Cleveland, who skipped the 23rd presidency, this is hinting at how Barack Obama will serve non-consecutive terms after Harris's death in a plane crash. Harris's predicted plane crash will be exactly 7 plus 7 times 7, which equals 56, which hints at 3 sets of 7 months after a rare 4.0, which hints at the 44th president, earthquake in Cleveland, Ohio. Okay, it's very rare to have an earthquake in Cleveland, especially a 4.0. And that's why, because of remember I was saying the Israelites enacted a 3 sets of 7 before the walls of security collapsed due to an earthquake. That's why we have this 3 sets of 7 symbolic period of months, exact connection between the earthquake in Cleveland to Kamala Harris's predicted plane crash. This connection, this 56 months connection, which by the way is the ultimate 3 sets of 7 number, because they marched around once per day for 7 days, but on the 7th day, they marched 7 times while blowing 7 trumpets. So in reality, it was a 7 and a 7 times 7, the Israelites in Jericho. All right, this connection is also 4 years and 8 months, and Obama's second non-consecutive presidency will be the 48th presidency. All right, this is merely scratching the surface of the reasons for how this prediction is known in advance. For more information, please visit bitchute.com or odyssey.com, spelled O-D-Y-S-E-E, video channel, Harris Crash Prediction. That's the name of the channels. And also read the website trumpprediction.com. Okay, a couple more things to add. The 8 days in between Harris's visit to the 8th state and her predicted crash on February 10th is also 4 plus 4 days, which hints at 44. February 10th will be exactly 2 times 3 years after an Israeli F-16, which hints at 4 times 4, fighter jet was shot down. Thus, the 4 plus 4 days pairs with the 2 times 3 years to confirm the signs and connections. But also, what wasn't known, because this was written on January 31st, is that we had an Iran sign on February 2nd, 4 plus 4 days before February 10th. And again, it was Iran that shot down the fighter jet. The Iran sign was when the U.S. followed up after being hit by the drone. But that's another story, which I'll explain in another video. The 49th vice president, Kamala Harris is the 49th vice president, which hints at 7 times 7. Okay, so the 49th, as in 7 times 7, vice president's 7th visit to South Carolina in Myrtle Beach was for a speech at the 7th Episcopal District at their 31st annual retreat. Isaiah chapter 31, which is hinting at a 3 sets of 7 if you didn't catch that. Isaiah chapter 31, because she visited the 31st annual retreat, begins with, "Woe to those who go down to Egypt." And Harris is predicted to go down in her plane in a crash near Little Egypt. And by the way, she will either start her flight from the 31st state or she will be on her way to the 31st state. I forgot to add that. Additionally, Myrtle Beach was where the spy balloon went down, and the spy balloon pointed to the eclipse that peaked over St. Louis and Little Egypt. Kamala Harris will be in the fourth state 4 days before February 10th. Similar to how she will be in the 8th state 8 days before February 10th. She will be speaking about abortion rights on February 6th, which hints at 2-6 and 26. And 26 is the gematria value for the name Yahweh, the name of God in the Bible. And by the way, of course, the fourth state visit 4 days before February 10th hints at the 44th president, who will become the president again as a result of Kamala Harris's death in a plane crash on February 10th. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the BitChute.com or the Odyssey.com channel. And do it now in case you aren't able to later.